What is up? DSP here, and welcome to the latest edition of the Hateful Truth. Today we are going to talk about the dungeon crawling RPG / action game Dungeon Siege 3 for the Xbox 360. That is the version that I played. Now, what I'd like to start with talking about with this game is a little bit about the previous installments of Dungeon Siege. Previously, Dungeon Siege was always a PC exclusive game. Now, obviously, in this day and age, when there's an opportunity to go cross-platform and all that, opening up your game to all those new gamers and that new audience, that's obviously the route that they were going to go. And traditionally, when Dungeon Siege was on the PC, it was something special. It really was, because it was an open-world dungeon crawler where you could pretty much go wherever you wanted, but if you went to the wrong place and the monsters were several levels above you, you were screwed. They would really kill you with one hit. And the game used to basically be that you could level up your character and give them different abilities. So you can maybe start out with a basic melee type, and then you decide, you know what, I want some magic, and you can get some magic. Or you could just focus primarily on one type of attack, whether it's magic, whether it's melee, etc. And you could become a pretty well-rounded character. Well, when I played the old Dungeon Siege games, I did actually play both Dungeon Siege 1 and 2 on the PC. That's exactly what I did. I usually had a more well-rounded character who had maybe some decent magic for like mid-range or long-range melee or long-range attacks, and then melee attacks for up-close if things got up-close and personal. Well, Dungeon Siege 3, really, when it comes down to it, the only real thing for me that I can see a similarity between Dungeon Siege 3 and its two previous installments is that some of the combat is similar. If you're using melee style, it's kind of the same as how it used to be in the old Dungeon Siege games. Or if you're using magic and ranged attacks, it's also as if like you were that class back in the old Dungeon Siege games. But besides that, you could literally slap a different name on this game and no one would know, no one would be none the wiser. This game is pretty much almost nothing like the previous two Dungeon Siege games on PC. And I get the feeling that's why a lot of people who were fans of the original Dungeon Siege games have been coming out and kind of panning this game and saying, this is not Dungeon Siege. This is not what it was about. Now, I'm not surprised, because first of all, it's been a very long time since the release of Dungeon Siege 2. If I'm not mistaken, it's over 5 years. And in addition to that, this game now, being that it's a console game, it's being published by Square Enix, it was developed by Obsidian, it's a different gaming studio than who was making the previous Dungeon Sieges, and therefore the game's obviously going to be different than what it used to be. So what did they go? What route did they go with this game? Well, if I could compare anything to this game that I've played recently, it would have to be Dragon Age 2. This game is like playing Dragon Age 2 with maybe a little bit of more simplification of the control scheme of the combat. And so really the only way that I can really explain this game is to compare it directly with Dragon Age 2, okay? So very story-driven, a long narrative, okay? That's completely different from the previous Dungeon Siege games. The previous Dungeon Siege games had almost no story. It was very bare bones. It was more about the dungeon crawling and the combat and the looting. This game is more about the story, okay? Now, you get to pick one of 4 different character archetypes right off the bat. That's completely different from the old Dungeon Siege games. You get to pick either a melee fighter, a straight-up like mage type, or you could be like maybe a combat mage hybrid, or you could be a ranged character who actually has guns, okay? And so it's really a different take on the dungeon crawling aspect from the previous Dungeon Siege installments. Now, the way the game works is you start out with this certain person in this certain class, and as you play in the game, you're going to be exploring different areas, you'll be talking to people to get quests. Again, very similar to Dragon Age 2, you just walk around, talk to people, they'll give you a quest, you go complete the quest, you get experience and a reward, and you get level up. And as you level up, you get the ability to level up your character, which means unlock new abilities. Some of them might be combat abilities, some of them more might be like a healing ability. Every single character has the ability to heal themselves over time. So again, another takeaway from the old Dungeon Siege games. In the old Dungeon Siege games, so you didn't necessarily have to get magic to heal yourself, and not every character would have the ability to heal themselves. You had to buy potions. It was health and mana potions. In this game, not so. In this game, mana regenerates as you hit things. So the more you hit things, the more mana you get. And it's not really called mana, it's called other things in this game. I think it's called focus for a melee fighter, which is what I was playing as. And Health regenerates over time only if you use your healing ability. So it's a no-brainer that that's probably the first ability you want to get. In fact, when you start the game, your healing ability is the only ability you can even get for the first couple of levels. So obviously it's the first one you're going to get. As you level up further, you can actually put upgrades onto your existing abilities to make them better. Whether you get maybe a boost to health or your healing ability, maybe you get a mana bonus, meaning every time you hit something, you actually get mana back as well. That kind of stuff. So you can get these different bonuses on your abilities that make them better over time. So that is like the leveling up system. And then there's also passive abilities, meaning not something you actively use in combat or have to press a button to use, but maybe an ability like you deal more damage when you're using a certain ability or something like that. You can upgrade those passive abilities as well. And that's pretty much the evolution of your character. Now, the main gameplay of the game is, as I said, going around, talking to people, unlocking a quest, go do the quest, go back to the person, get your reward. But another major aspect that I have to say, probably one of the few things that's very similar to the old Dungeon Siege games, is the looting aspect. Everything you kill in this game is going to drop a random item. You're going to find lots of random treasure chests and things throughout the game. And you're going to have different grades of items. You're going to have a standard item, you're going to have maybe a special item, then maybe a rare item, and then like a super unique item where there's only one like it in the whole game. And one of the addictive things, the most addictive things about the original Dungeon Siege games was this looting aspect. You just wanted to keep playing to see what new rare item you could get. And just like the old Dungeon Siege games, in Dungeon Siege 3, when you get a new item and you equip it, whether it's armor or a weapon, you can actually see your physical appearance change in the game. And that can be really neat, especially as you start to get some better items. You can get really cool swords with flame flying off of them or glowing, pulsating. At the end of the game, I got a really cool piece of armor that gave me demon wings. It was like red, burning demon wings, and that was really sweet. So there's incentive to get better items, okay? And you can find them or you can buy them from vendors later on in the game. When I had enough money, I started buying them from vendors. So that is definitely an interesting and addictive aspect of the game. Now, really the biggest thing, the two biggest things between the old Dungeon Siege games and this one, number one, it's not open world at all. You can look around, but then you're going to get blocked. You're going to find a locked door, you're going to find a locked gate, you're not going to be able to proceed. So unlike the old Dungeon Siege, where as you walked around you could go wherever you wanted, but you get your ass handed to you pretty quickly, in this game it's just like pretty much all the other standard RPGs, action-oriented RPGs, where they lock you out of certain areas until you're basically ready to go there and unlock any quests or anything in that area to progress the story. I'm trying to think what the other thing was, what other major difference was. I mean, there are a lot of major differences from this and the old Dungeon Siege games, but the thing is, when you really weigh in on it, and, oh that's right, the other major thing is the story. Like I said, the story is a major part of this game. It's interesting. When you talk to people in towns, you get dialogue options, just like Dragon Age 2, just like Mass Effect. You get these cool different dialogue options, and the choices you make in the game actually affect the story. Meaning, a choice you make later on in the game might affect something that happens, and then even later on, it actually affects your ending. So similar like Fallout New Vegas, your ending is directly affected by the choices you make in the game, which is pretty cool. I like that aspect. I like how in Mass Effect, in this game, and in all these games, they're doing that now. You know, it's not just like, what's the point of me making a choice when I'm going to get the same generic ending anyway? That's not what this game does. It actually gives you a unique ending, which is pretty cool. So yeah, the thing is, even though this game is a lot different from the original Dungeon Siege games, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad game. In fact, it's not a bad game. For what it does, it does it pretty well. The graphics engine is decent. Interesting locales and graphical design, you know, it's typical fantasy design. The combat is not bad at all. Very responsive controls, abilities that work. Out of the 4 character archetypes that there are in the game, not one of them is really particularly weak. They're all pretty strong once you figure out how exactly to use them. And you don't have to play them any certain one way. In fact, when I was playing with the warrior, a lot of people might say, oh, when you're a warrior, all you do is just run up and hit things, hit things, hit things. Not necessarily true. I actually had some abilities for him where I would throw out a tornado, it would slow everyone in front of me, so now they're all kind of moving in slow motion. Then I would use a ground attack where he stabs the ground with his sword, and an earthquake rips through the ground and attacks a vast array of the people in front of you, so you can actually take out entire mobs at once. And that actually ended up being one of my most effective strategies, as opposed to just running up and hacking and slashing everything. So you can play the game in different ways, depending on who you pick and what abilities you unlock and focus on, and that's a pretty cool thing. The story itself is pretty good, and I'm surprised because, as I said, in the previous Dungeon Siege games there really wasn't much of a story. In this game, it's heavily story-driven. You're trying to basically reform a legion who are basically like the defenders of the realm. There's a particular conqueror who's actually a woman who's trying to take over the kingdom, and she's at war with the legion, she's at war with the royalty, and it's your job to reform the legion and try to stop her. And that's the gist of the story of the game. There's lots of twists and turns. There's a lot of cool things involving spiritual beings, gods actually, that get involved. So it is an interesting fantasy RPG style story. The characters themselves, the voice acting is pretty good. I have no complaints really about the voice acting. The sound is pretty standard and average, I'd say. You know, standard RPG fare for music and such, and sound effects and such like that. The looting is a lot of fun. Just like the original Dungeon Siege games, the looting is very addictive and a lot of fun, and you will find yourself hard-pressed to not be tempted to open every single chest, to go in every nook and cranny of every dungeon to try to make sure you found every piece of loot. If one thing that people might complain about is you do spend a lot of time in the inventory screen comparing items that you found. Gee, is this one better? Is this one better? And then making the choice on which one you want to equip and actually use. But for people who are used to that kind of thing from traditional RPGs like Diablo, like the original Dungeon Siege games, you're going to like the loot system in this game. So yeah, if anything, the game, I would have to say, it's very similar to Dragon Age 2, as opposed to its Dungeon Siege. Really not. Again, they probably didn't need to call it Dungeon Siege 3. They probably just used the name for name recognition, so people would know what it is, because they were afraid if they started a new IP, it's a larger risk. Some differences between this and Dragon Age 2, the game is a lot shorter. Okay, Dragon Age 2, with all the optional content, with all the length of the story being 20 plus hours long, this game is only about 11 hours, and it was just over 11 hours my playthrough, and I was doing all of the side quests I could find in the game. In fact, I only messed one up. I failed one because I forgot to go to the cave before I progressed the main storyline. But besides that, I did every side quest and major quest, and it only took me about a little bit over 11 hours to beat the game. So that may be one negative for people who are maybe looking for a little bit of a longer game. And the other thing, really, it doesn't stand out to me. It's a good game, don't get me wrong. The story's good, the gameplay's good, the looting's great, but nothing really makes it unique or makes it stand out compared to other games. If anything, maybe the only thing that makes this game stand out is that it has two-player co-op, and you can play the entire game with two players, because unlike Dragon Age, well actually I don't want to say unlike, because in Dragon Age you have a party too, but you always have a companion with you in this game, so you're always two people against the mobs, and a person can drop in and out whenever they want. So that's probably the one difference. You know, you can't do co-op in Dragon Age 2. You can do co-op in Dungeon Siege 3. So if you're really into the hack and slash, but not really, it doesn't have to be. You can not do hack and slash and do magic and gameplay if you choose a different archetype. But if you're really into the dungeon crawling, the looting, that kind of RPG combat with maybe an interesting story, doing a lot of side missions, and you want to do it with a friend, this is probably right up your alley. If you're looking for a more engrossing experience, something that's going to be longer than 11 hours, and something that breaks the mold, this probably isn't what you want. It's a standard dungeon crawling experience. It's good at what it does, but it's not anything superb. It's not a Game of the Year contender. You know what I mean? It's a good game. It's worth it if you want to play an 11 to 12 hour RPG, but it's really not anything special. So, all things considered, being that I actually did enjoy the game. I liked the combat, the looting, the story, but also considering the name is a misnomer because it's not a Dungeon Siege game. It doesn't play like the old Dungeon Siege games. The fact that it really is only 11 hours long for an RPG, and it doesn't break the mold. I weigh everything in my mind, and Dungeon Siege 3 gets a 7 from me. Okay? Now remember, my rating scale is very fair and honest. When I say a 7, I mean it's above average, but it's not reaching 8s and 9s. It's not something that's doing something interesting and original, or it doesn't grip you enough to make you really want to play it more. You know, I played it once, I beat it, I'm never going to play it again. There's no reason. There's no additional content for the co-op campaign. It's the same game, so there's really no reason for me to do that. So yeah, Dungeon Siege 3 gets a 7 from me. A good game, again, if you want to play a cool dungeon crawler, if you want to do co-op with a friend, this game's right up your alley. But if you're looking for a more in-depth RPG, If you're looking for something maybe like along the lines of Dragon Age 2, a longer game, this isn't going to be your cup of tea. And definitely, if you're looking for a game that plays like the old Dungeon Siege games, you're not going to like this game because there's so many dramatic changes in the way that the game works from those old games for the PC that they really shouldn't have called it Dungeon Siege 3. They could have called it Dungeon Crawler. Really, they could have just called it Dungeon Crawler, and people probably would have bought it knowing what it was, as opposed to this. It's really not a Dungeon Siege game. So, alright, so that's my honest rating for the game. Hope you enjoyed this episode of The Hateful Truth, and I will see you guys later. Thanks.